I'm Judy Teven, and with me is Melissa Sinanu, and we are really excited to be discussing social and emotional learning today, specifically turning data into actionable practices. Now, before we get started, I do want you to know, like Katie said, put all your questions into chat, and we will be recording this and we'll send it out to everyone who registered. But, keep those questions coming. What we'll do is we'll have a little Q&A at the end of our session.
So today's news is filled with the fact that our students have unprecedented social and emotional learning needs. The disruption for students has been well documented, with specific examples of students suffering from depression and other difficulties peppering the news and everything from the New York Times to Education Week. However, a little harder to find are articles about what we can be doing to support students as they work hard to get back on track and once again flourish in school. So in today's webinar, we'll discuss some bigger picture do's and don'ts as you roll out your SEL initiatives. We will also suggest some actionable strategies for making a difference in your schools. So this includes SEL versus social skills, just a quick compare and contrast, the importance of starting small, but with consistency. We'll talk about improving school culture by making sure every student feels seen every day. We'll talk about school climate surveys for both educators and parents. We'll discuss using SMART goals to develop class or individual competencies. And finally, structuring SEL safe practices when rolling out your SEL curriculum.
That's right. We have a lot to talk about. So first, we're going to take a moment to contrast social and emotional learning with social skills. Now, I know everyone on the webinar is likely saying we know this already, but I promise just 2 minutes on the difference before we dive into the meat of the webinar. Social and emotional learning certainly overlaps with those social skills, right, in some areas, but it isn't the same thing. So social skills focus on appropriate behavior that helps a student fit into the classroom and on the playground, while social and emotional learning helps students develop those underlying skills to truly empathize with others and make the right decisions. Improved SEL competencies should naturally display as excellent social skills, right? So let's define those social skills. Social skills are the ability to respond to a given environment in a manner that produces, maintains, and enhances positive interpersonal, right, those between people effects, right? So this includes manners and positive interactions with others, appropriate classroom behavior, better ways to handle frustration and anger, and acceptable ways to resolve conflict with others.
Then SEL, by contrast, includes self-awareness, self-management, relationship skills, responsible decision-making, and social awareness. So as you can see, excellent social skills are typically an outcome of well-developed SEL competencies. Okay, now let's start talking about some strategies for developing effective SEL practices in your school. All research says that students thrive under structure and consistency. So keeping this in mind, don't try to do every SEL idea you've read about to see what sticks. This will have the opposite impact you're looking for, as educators and students alike will see this as one more thing unlikely to last the year. Pick 1 or 2 small things and implement them school-wide all year long. For example, the Center for Educational Effectiveness has a proven track record working with districts to improve school climate. One of the simple yet effective practices they work on with schools is to make sure that every student knows they are seen and heard. They accomplish this by ensuring every student is greeted each morning by name by 4 different caring adults in the building. Similarly, they're sent home at the end of the day in the same manner. This accomplishes the important goal of making sure no student feels invisible or unimportant at school. Everyone knows they are cared for. This practice can have an amazing impact on student self-esteem and school culture. Now, on its face, this may sound like a fairly simple practice to put in place. Sure, we'll say hi and bye to everyone. In reality, this requires communication and coordination to effectively execute. Teachers are placed in zones throughout the school during drop-off and pickup, and educators must coordinate and communicate so that one student, for example, isn't greeted by 8 teachers and another by none. So we give you this great example to point out that even something that seems as simple as greetings and goodbyes requires professional development, coordination, and then consistent execution the entire year to become a habit.
With this in mind, we recommend selecting a few small things to do really well, like the greetings and goodbyes, as opposed to trying to implement rapid wholesale SEL initiatives in the building. So the first thing to tackle when trying to support students' development with SEL initiatives, and frankly with MTSS, is your school culture and climate. Of the hundreds of schools that I've walked into, I feel like I can immediately tell when the school culture is really going well, what it's like, and how the staff and students themselves feel when they're at school. There is nothing better than walking into a school with a supportive environment dedicated to student learning. You can immediately tell this is a great place to be a teacher and a student, right? And conversely, we've all had those experiences where you walk into a school and the atmosphere is, well, just off. So before any real changes can be implemented, you need to make sure your school culture includes the philosophy that every student can learn and that every student deserves respect and to have their voice heard. Now, as Peter Drucker is quoted as saying, culture eats strategy, or is it structure, for breakfast? And what this is saying is that you can have all the best ideas or programs in the world, but nothing will come to fruition unless the culture supports change and collaboration as well.
And actually, ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, explicitly recognizes the relationship between school climate and student outcomes in the law's provisions. The Act specifically requires that state education agencies include at least one non-academic indicator, such as school climate or safety, into their accountability frameworks to affect positive change. This became law in 2015, long before the pandemic brought school climate and SEL into focus for many of us. So with that in mind, it's a great first step to screen students and staff about the school climate. Now, thinking back to what we talked about earlier, this doesn't mean that you'll be able to or even want to have a knee-jerk reaction to the results and try to change everything immediately. No matter what the results say, taking it slow is going to reap higher rewards. School climate measures can help educators, parents, and the community to understand student, staff, and parent perceptions of climate in their schools, set appropriate goals for improving student behavior and student-staff relationships while monitoring that ongoing progress, identify and adapt to changing student, staff, and parent needs and priorities, and make data-driven decisions about programs and practices that could improve school climate.
And one way to achieve this is through surveys for all stakeholders, students, educators, and parents, right? Now, Classworks has embedded a student social and emotional competency survey into our platform that allows you to gather exactly this type of data. This survey, developed by Washoe County Schools, along with CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic and Social and Emotional Learning, and the University of Illinois Chicago, is a great starting place to understand students' self-perception and their learning environment. Now, a school climate survey for educators can offer a few different insights. You can learn how effectively teachers perceive early release days to be utilized by staff, how teachers feel, if they feel aligned to their grade level peers, and if parent involvement is at the hoped for levels. Just like students, when the staff in your building is heard, respected, and supported, they are able to do their job in a manner that will best support student learning. Now, in the same vein, a school climate survey for parents can help you identify how welcome parents feel in the school and how much they understand about the curriculum and how well the bus system functions from their perspective, right? And even their perception of their student safety at school.
And a parent survey may lead to some simple steps you can take if you aren't already. For example, make sure the visitor policy at your school is posted in a place that's visible to parents. Create a warm reception for families at the front office. Send personalized invitations encouraging parents to visit the school. Send a thank you to parents from teachers or administration for bringing supplies, volunteering, or attending certain school-sponsored events. Ensure that schools respond to phone calls and emails within reasonable amounts of time. So similarly, let's think about parental involvement in their schools, in their student-specific academic plan. Are parents informed when their child is assigned to a new reading intervention at school? Do parents understand the process for gifted and talented testing, AP honors enrollment? Making sure you can answer yes to these questions will go a long way toward improving a school climate.
So now let's talk about helping specific students or groups of students develop their SEL skills with SMART goals based on those student responses to the Classworks SE survey, which evaluates student ease within those CASEL core competencies. So once students in grades 4 through 12 have completed the survey, Classworks offers you both individual results and the trends for different groups of students. And this can help you decide the right SMART goal for students or even for a whole class if that's meaningful for you. So let's take a look at the Classworks SMART goal functionality. The concept behind SMART goal setting is, and finally, we'll look at the concept behind the SMART goal setting and then finally connect those competencies assessed in the survey with some practical goals.
So first, SMART goal functionality. With Classworks, a student has one active goal at a time. To set a goal, a student will answer the following. What exactly do you want to accomplish? How will you know that you met your goal? How will you meet your goal? Then they put a deadline on the goal and assign a confidence level to their ability to meet it. These exemplify the SMART framework because a goal that answers these questions is specific, measured, actionable, timely, and relevant and timely, I guess. In Classworks, students document with their teacher the steps they are taking along the way, or they may just engage in a one-on-one dialogue with the teacher as they progress toward achieving their goal. So a few words about SMART goals in general before we dive into our examples. Just like everything else we've been talking about, SMART goals should be rolled out in smaller steps with sustainable best practices.
Exactly. So let's think about some do's and don'ts for SMART goals. We'll start with a don't. Don't have every middle school teacher decide to use SMART goals with every student, right? This will result in students trying to attain multiple goals simultaneously. So do have a homeroom teacher introduce something maybe small and sustainable. The purpose of the first goal may be to simply and effectively communicate back and forth with their teacher for that first month of school using the Classworks chat feature. And then start the second month of school with students writing a goal that they have chosen to achieve.
So let's look more specifically at the 8 domains the Classworks Competency Survey is giving you data for. These are relationship skills, responsible decision-making, self-awareness, emotion knowledge, self-awareness, self-concept, self-management, emotion regulation, self-management, goal management, self-management, schoolwork, and social awareness. The students are given a series of scenarios and they reply on a scale of very difficult, difficult, easy to very easy for each question. You can look at individual student results for this if you want to have students create SMART goals. Or you may decide that an entire class is struggling with one subdomain and create a single goal everyone will work on as a team. Classworks, for example, makes this really easy by offering you reports to group the students by subdomain. Looking at this data, you can make some very important decisions about what's next. Let's say, for example, that self-management, emotion regulation is something that many students in your class are struggling with. It may be simpler and promote better teamwork in the classroom to create a class goal. Now, this may be a two-part process.
That's right. So the first may be to set up a chart like this feelings check-in chart where students identify their state of mind daily, right? Because the first step in regulating emotions is to properly identify those emotions, right? So you may decide as a class that the goal for the month before you even start tackling controlling emotions is really going to be a goal that's more closely aligned to self-awareness, emotion, knowledge. Now, this may be for students to make a habit of coming in every day and identifying their emotions first thing upon entering the classroom. In this case, the students would write a class goal, right? So they'll start by thinking, what exactly do I want to accomplish? Well, I want to understand my feelings every day. Then, how will you know how you met your goal? Well, the chart will be filled out every day by everyone in the class. And how will you meet your goal? Well, I'll walk over to the chart first thing before sitting down, and I'll make sure I remember to mark how I'm feeling that day. And then they'll put a deadline. So let's say maybe after 4 weeks on that goal, and assign a confidence level. Do they think they can accomplish this, right? And their ability to meet it.
So this can be the first step toward emotion regulation. Then the teacher may introduce some conversations throughout the month about how to regulate your feelings when you feel an emotion to an extreme. Then, at the end of the month, the teacher can either decide to repeat the same goal, the one about tracking your feelings, for the next month, or she may decide to introduce some goals around using the coping strategies discussed during the month. This is where you may also decide to introduce individual goals instead of class goals. Now, this also offers teachers an opportunity for a confidential conversation with the student using the chat feature in Classworks goals if there is a student that indicates, for example, they are consistently sad or angry. So let's look at an example of working with a student on a specific topic or goal.
Okay, so for example, let's say you have a student that is often stressed because things are out of their control. So let's think about a goal that we can set to help the student set aside their stress and focus instead on the classroom. So here's an example of what this might look like for a middle school student. The goal focuses on the area of self-awareness, specifically emotion knowledge, right? So this student has built the goal with stress in mind. So it's specific, right? What exactly do you want to accomplish? Well, I want to handle stress better. And it's measurable. How will you know that you met your goal? Well, I will send a message to my teacher in the Classworks goal tracker when I use a strategy. And I'll do this at least once a week for a month. Of course, it's actionable. How will you meet your goal? I'll use the strategy of distraction when I'm stressed. When I'm stressed, I'll distract myself by calling a friend, counting colors on a poster, or even just mentally putting my problem up on a shelf. Depending on the student and their level of stress, this may or may not be a full month-long goal.
Now, thinking back to the practical application of this and sustainability, it's important that the teacher does not overreach on trying to start with every single student having goals of varying length and on all different topics. Teachers are overwhelmed, especially this year. And rolling out custom goals for every single student that changes every week, every other week, or every month will be an initiative that might sound good at the beginning of the year, but may quickly become unsustainable. So Linda Darling Hammond, SEL proponent and president of the California Board of Education, said it best. A problem is that schools are fragmented with students going to different teachers in the course of a day. So to build the knowledge base you need, all the faculty on the same page, so we're not teaching things over and over and over again, we're building on a knowledge base of competence and reinforcing students on the behaviors we want them to learn. So we recommend that teachers set class goals and talk about them with the whole group, and perhaps have individual goals for just a few students that need something different. Remember, this is confidential, so students have a safe space to communicate their challenges and talk with the teacher as they grow. Ultimately, you are rolling out your sustainable and consistent practices, not just in specific classrooms, but across the entire school, and even extending to after-school programs. This takes time, but you will get there with consistency.
That's right. Consistency is important for teachers as well as students. A strategy such as feelings check-in being done, for example, in a homeroom, PE, as well as after-school care, makes implementing easier for teachers and provides students the same support, no matter where they are in their day. Now, a final recommendation is from CASEL about sustainably integrating SEL into the classroom. And this is to implement something CASEL defines as safe practices. So CASEL-based SEL training, remember the Classworks SE survey is based on those CASEL core competencies, is most effective when it involves the following 4 safe practices, which stands for sequence, active, focused, and explicit. So sequenced is connected, coordinated activities, right? It's active, dynamic, and varied activities that engage students. Should be focused. It has at least one component devoted to developing those SEL skills. And it should be explicit. It targets specific CASEL skills rather than SEL as a whole, right? So suppose, for example, that you want to teach your first grade class social awareness as part of the reading instruction. Instead of encouraging students to use their manners, you might read a book about compassion, right, which is sequenced, and would add in those discussion questions and maybe a writing activity, right, that makes it active. To teach your students about social awareness, which again, you're being focused and explicit. So using the safe strategy helps you really focus your methods. Now, by integrating the SAFE strategy into your school's SEL programs, you can model in a way that primes it for success. Plus, you can always adapt the SAFE strategy to fit your classroom's specific needs, right? So if you want to teach several skills at once or include a non-CASEL skill, for example, you can use the SAFE strategy as a guideline instead of a hard and fast rule. And with the CASEL core competencies and SAFE strategy as your social and emotional resources, you're sure to create a thoughtful program in your classroom.
So let's recap some of the things we discussed in today's webinar. Social and emotional development for students will lead to excellent social skills, but it is a distinct concept. Start with small, consistent strategies. Consider improving school climate with a strategy for greeting each student each day. Think about school climate surveys for educators and for parents. Using SMART goals to develop class and individual competencies. And finally, structuring SEL safe practices when rolling out your SEL curriculum. And always, always remember to be gentle on yourself as you work to improve school culture and school climate while helping students develop their social and emotional core competencies.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. We know that navigating new or growing SEL initiatives just can be overwhelming. And so if you are already in our Classworks family, please know that we're here to support you. So reach out if you want to explore any of the ideas that you heard today. And I did see a lot of excitement in the chat, so we may have some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa and Judy. That was so insightful. I had a lot of aha moments, and I think we do have some awesome questions that came in via private message. So I'm seeing one which says, which surveys does Classworks offer and where can I find parent or teacher surveys?
I can take that one. Yeah, that's a great question. So Classworks offers the student survey, right? That's our student survey based on those CASEL core competencies, and that's embedded into the platform for you guys to use as you want. And then we can share some links for some free resources for parent and educator surveys as well. That's not embedded in our platform, but there's a lot of resources out there. We can just share a couple that we found in the chat.
Awesome. Yeah, we will share those. Thank you for that. Someone also said, thank you for this really informative presentation. I haven't heard of the CASEL safe practices. Where do I go for more information on those?
That's another great question. I know it's really, really interesting, isn't it? I feel like we found a lot of research on it, but it's been really interesting. It's pockets are really utilizing it. I think we also have a link that has more information about how to use that. We thought that might be a question.
Yeah, so we'll put that right in the chat as well. And then I heard a lot about SMART goals. So when it comes to SMART goals, how do we know which goals to develop?
I can jump on that one. Yeah, so we agree. We have a lot of teachers that are, of course, embracing the SMART goals for data, like more academic mastery and things like that. But we know that the SE survey is providing a lot of really great information as well. So we actually put some guidance together for you guys to utilize. Some of the goals that you saw today were examples from that, and have independent goals based off of those specific areas that the students are have as part of their survey. So we have that too. We can put that in a link in the chat. We'll definitely have it in our follow-up, but it is actually for like grades actually 3 and up. We have them based off of that in different categories. And then we have some class goals that are specific to kindergarten and second grade, just because we know that you can do that. And actually some of the independent goals for older students could even be a class goal if you notice a trend within your survey results. So we really knew that would be a valuable resource for everyone, as everyone's, like I said, I feel like their SEL programs are growing. We're all trying to make new strides, but when we agree, start, small and make those small changes.
Great, thank you, Judy. We had a chat question that just came in that says, other than the goal setting feature in Classworks, are there additional features for SEL Tier 2 or Tier 3 resources supports built into Classworks?
So not necessarily. I mean, obviously the badges that students earn in Classworks is really great for motivation and keeping students on track. We've got the student observations for your PBIS initiatives. Judy, I'm trying to think, the SE Competency Survey and Goal Tracker, those are really the main.
Right. And then there's a note feature that's part of our progress monitoring as well, that I feel like lets teachers kind of focus what, if anything, they need to share that has to do with intervention specifically, to kind of connect that more of a whole child aspect, right? When you're looking at that and discussing in student support team meetings. So that type of thing, we really look at our supports as being more like a toolbox to put other initiatives in place for you.
Great, thank you. Those are the questions actually that I'm seeing on my end, but we'll just give it one more minute. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to pop them in chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself, you're certainly welcome to ask as well.
Can I ask a question? So I was looking at some of the goals, the goal that you kind of went over, and we're at a high school level. So do you have anything do you have goals for each level of school? Like, depending, like for the older kids, if we wanted to do this, because if we were going to roll this out, I wouldn't mind doing it in the middle school, but we were looking to try to start it at the high school level. So what would be your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there are definitely some goals that are very much for the high school student, for older students. Some of them kind of revolve around some other practices that you would put in place, like a listening circle, like to begin and end the day, those kinds of things. But those are kind of laid out there as well. So it would definitely be like, go through and look through the ideas. There's some strategies for, for positive, responsible decision making, and like processes for students to follow a lot about empathy, which of course is something else that's very high on the priority list for high schools, and how they, work on empathizing with others and things like that. So definitely do that. I think that's it should all be in that resource that we put in, that's through the Classworks help center.
That goes through high school.
Mm-hmm.
We could go on and look at it currently.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, I think, Kellen, if you could throw that in there, I think you might have already. Yeah, it's within the chat. Oh, she just threw it back in there again for you, Linda.
Okay, I see that one. Thank you.
Yes.
And then I saw a question that says, is the SEL survey in Classworks K through 12?
Yeah, it's self-administered grades 4 through 12, and then the teacher can take it on a student's behalf, grades K through 3. And it is in English and in Spanish.
Thank you. Yeah, and we certainly feel free to pop in if you have any other questions. We will be having a follow-up email to everyone that attended with all of these resources in there as well. So you don't have to hurry up and put them in there. We will be sending them out to everyone. We'll give it one more minute. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. All right, so it seems like we covered a lot of ground today, and we appreciate everyone taking their time to join us. Like I mentioned, we will be sending out the recording to everyone, as well as the resources we mentioned. Feel free to share those with anyone who is also interested in SEL that you may know of. Also, if you're not yet part of the Classworks family and would like to learn more, start a conversation with us at classworks.com, and we'd be happy to talk to you about your SEL plans. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.